good leadership, I think, happens with intention. It's not accidental.
You look around and sometimes you see success and you see people who are leading, but many times it's because the people who are following are paid to follow them.
No matter how much money they've made or how much success, how much their name is known, everybody looks back to see what's left, to see is there a legacy? Is there something that remains after I'm gone? But if I'm going to lead, I first have to allow myself to be led.
Remember, the most important thing, God, your family, kids, even those who maybe aren't followers of Christ, know that time is the most valuable thing that you possibly could have. It's not money.
But recognize, like, the biggest enemy to me will be me trying to be somebody else.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Heritage Group podcast. I'm so excited today because we are going to be starting a series about leadership. And as many of you know, leadership doesn't just test our abilities, it shapes who we become. Over time, the leaders who last are not the loudest or the most visible, but the ones who grow wiser, steadier, and more trusted as their responsibility increases. Leadership That Lasts is a series about becoming a better leader over time through formation, reflection, and earned influence. What I find most compelling is the greatest leaders don't always lead the same way, but they are often shaped by the same things: pressure, experience, humility, and a willingness to keep learning. Today's conversation is foundational. Lee Denton is the lead pastor at Kibler Baptist Church, a graduate of Wichita Baptist University, and has over 19 years of full-time ministry experience. He is married to his wife, Lauren, one of my best friends, and they have 3 children. And I'm excited to speak with Lee about what leadership has taught him so far and what it's still teaching him as he leads. I had to text you this morning and ask you how many years in the ministry. And whenever I texted you that and you responded, I couldn't believe it, really.
Yeah, wow.
Wow.
Eric, it's so awesome to be with you today, and so honored, to be just having this conversation. We had to ask Lauren, how many years has it been? That seems unbelievable.
It really is, and time goes by so fast. Some of you may know this, but Lee and Lauren are great friends of Cody and I's, and so whenever I was looking into leadership and thinking about what you guys would want to hear from on the HG podcast, one of the things I looked for when I started Heritage Group, and Justine and I started Heritage Group, was anything that could help me with leadership and just leading people. And I thought of you first, one of my very first. I've had Dad on the podcast, and of course my dad is someone I deeply admire.
Likewise.
But then I thought about you, Lee, and I think what stands out to me about your leadership is if you attend Kibler Baptist, you see Lee right at the beginning of service. You'll catch him and he's kind of talking to some different people. But then even after service, you're staying, you're talking to people. But what I notice is that you're not the loudest in the room. And matter of fact, you've told me several times, I'm not always comfortable in a crowd. I don't want to be on stage,
Right.
But what's cool is you're a leader when you look behind and there are people following you. And so many times I've seen people come and go at Kibler, but one thing I've noticed that is consistent is the people who follow you many times are emulating the way that you lead, whether you notice this or not. Right. I have noticed this, and I think that's a key thing to observe. If you see a leader and there are people around him that want to be more like that person, that to me is one way that you can really identify a really effective leader. So just so you know, I think you're a very effective leader. I'm very excited to really understand your methods better, what God has called you to as far as leadership. And this is going to be a little different of a conversation because I know pastors, many times, you're not talking to the marketplace on how do I lead, because it is, you are a shepherd. You are someone who's, as you say, you're down in the ditches with people and you are doing life and you're leading in that way. But I want to talk to you today about your leadership. So let's get into it. Where has leadership formed you the most?
Again, Erica, an honor to be with, and so easily, having watched how God has expanded your leadership, and just whether it's Heritage Group or friends' influences, and the way that you have also emulated, and to hear you say some things, even what you just said, and more than just humility, it's like I don't perceive it that way, I guess. And that's probably God protecting. If it exists, as you say, it's probably God protecting my own pride and keeping me out of the way and just letting Him do what He does. Leadership is it's something like good leadership. I think happens with intention. It's not accidental. Someone even said, I even read it this week, where people think that they're natural born leaders. And I think there are those that kind of naturally step up front, but there are also people who naturally step up front that should not be up front. It's more of a drive maybe than a skill set. So skill sets can be learned, and goodness, I've not arrived. Like, again, sitting in this chair, it's I would probably overshadow that with everything. Like, there's no arrival here. It's just the constant learning, and probably of the last several years, more learning about me and the whys of me has really helped me maybe fine tune my efforts and steward better what I have to invest, whatever that may be.
That's such a good answer, and that's something I find myself realizing that some of the best leaders, it doesn't matter if they've been in some business or leadership role for 50 years, every single person says the same thing. I've not arrived. I really don't know. They know, but it's a hard thing for them to even take that recognition. And I think it's because they are outward focused on people. And that's why people are following them. It's, I think for me, my journey has been less about me gaining and more about God just taking things away from me, if that makes sense. Pride and selfishness and all those things. So I'm so excited for our audience to really hear some of the practical ways, because I know when I was younger, I saw people in leadership and I thought, I want to be like that. I need a podcast. I need somebody to tell me the 5 steps of how do I get there. Yeah. So I would just encourage you, if you're watching, a lot of the times it's not those 5 steps. It is becoming, like Lee said, it's really looking inward and saying, Lord, and, who help me search my heart and help me be the leader that you want me to be. It's not just us, following a 5-step program. Yeah. So let's get into more of that, because I think listening will help so much if someone's looking for that.
As you ask the next, because you mentioned pastoring, and that was something that you and Cody, being the friends of ours that you are, you do get behind the curtains look at even our own frailties and weaknesses and frustrations and different ways that we approach. But leadership is leadership. And for me, even outside of pastoring, like even whether it's business model, personal business model, or whatever, the principles that are taught through the scriptures are solid and foundational. And you can even see people who may not ascribe to Christianity practicing principles that the Bible affirms and finding success in it because the principles remain.
That's good.
The ending of that, I think, is also what's eternal. And if it's not done to the purposes for God's glory, then it's only temporal. So it functions in this temporal world, but it's not eternal. And that's the dividing line there, I think. But so the principles, they exist, whether I'm practicing those within ministry, staff, leading volunteers, whatever that is, or if I'm dealing with employees.
Yeah. I'm glad that you brought this up, because as I was preparing for this, the way I titled it was Leadership That Lasts. And I was thinking, Lord, why do the people that I admire all look very similar? And I think part of that is you can lead and it not last, right? So, you look around and sometimes you see success and you see people who are leading, but many times it's because the people who are following are paid to follow them. And how many times have we seen that happen, where someone is elevated and they have all of the success and the money, and many times it's some of the people with the most money, right? Yeah. And what you notice, though, is later on, it doesn't last. People stop following them when the money stops or something shifts. it's not a lasting leadership. And I think it's so important to point out, as you have, that what God's intention and his plan is that when we do partner with him, that's something that lasts, not because
Yes.
of us, but because, like you said, the word is true and the principles are the same.
Yes.
So I love that you brought that out.
So good.
What did pressure reveal to you as a leader? Any pressure that you faced?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think pressure for all of us reveals what's inside of us, and that's scary. A lot of times, one leader that I remember early on in Lauren and I's marriage talked about the tube of toothpaste, and that's just what life is, and it squeezes you, and whatever is in there is what comes out. And so, if I don't like the results of how I dealt with or how I handled, or whether that's an individual, whether it's traffic, whatever it may be, what is in there is what comes out. It's truly, truly there. And yeah, that pressure is constantly revealing. And just about the time when I think I'm good, something will, squeeze from a place, maybe even years ago, and all of a sudden there's something there. And for me, in my world, that means I have to deal with that. And sometimes that takes a minute. And then sometimes I want to close the door and no, but again, that process for me in that leadership, God is constantly bringing that stuff to get it worked out.
That's really good. And actually, I find that I found that very true. And sometimes when pressure is hitting, like you said, I get alone. What does that practically look like for you? Say, you wake up, you get a text, all of a sudden the pressure's coming. What does Lee do in that situation, just practically?
Yeah. I think like naturally I want to run and help like that. And that's not me. That's not anything I worked to gain. It's just how God created. But I've also learned that the pause for me is really great. I don't trust my knee jerk oftentimes. Yeah. And again, if it's emergent in a family and it's like hospital time and let's go, or there's been something tragic, that's easy. Like, yes, let's run, let's go, get out of the way. But a lot of times the pause is very effective. Really and if the response remains, an hour later, 2 hours later, sometimes even a couple of days later, then I can trust that.
That's really good. Yeah, that's something I've identified in the leaders that and in you. So I was excited to hear your response to that, because I do see that in you, that there's not a knee-jerk reaction. And I think that's something you learn over time. Because for me, I was the oldest daughter, and I immediately, this in me, I can really shoot all the way up. And my team always laughs about, she'll shoot all the way up, but she's not going to stay up. She'll come down. And I'm like, Lord, help me
faster
to remember the pause and allow you and your wisdom to trump my thoughts.
That learning on me is necessity. Like it seems like a very humble thing, but if I'm honest, it started out, maybe I'll say it that way, it started out from probably a wrongfully prideful place, that I didn't like cleaning up the messes. Yeah. I didn't like eating crow, as they say. And I have a great disdain for that. And so it caused me to have to back up and just let me wait. And sometimes that's not good. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes there needs to be a quicker. But anyway, just
you learn.
Just hard knocks. Yeah, you
learn. And when the weight of leadership is on you, because everybody's going, what do we do?
Yeah.
And it's, if you make that decision, there's 10 other decisions that are also made. So it's very smart. Okay, learning from the past. This is something I was curious about. Yeah. What lesson have you learned that still shapes how you lead today?
Likewise, a lot of mistakes, things that I wish I could go back. I went through a time, even in the last year and a half, where I was wishing that this chapter didn't exist. Like, what would I do to go back and change some of that and do some things differently? And I think in Christ, and again, let's think about this in two forms here, because the marketplace, but also in kingdom. As much as we would want to do away with the past is still has shaped. It has affected. And I see the life of Jesus calling people from that, through that. The word redeemed literally meaning redeeming all things, not just the now and the present, but the past, the present, and the future. And so, one of the probably the greatest lesson for me when I consider past and learning is the honesty with me, which is ultimately to God.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of just covering stuff up, or again, I'm a recovering legalist.
Mm-hmm.
The performance mentality and earning my way to God is something that I've really had to wrestle with. Still can at times. But being able to be honest with God, and if I'm angry, I'm angry. Or if I want to quit, then I tell him I want to quit. Being, again, spirit and truth, worshiping in spirit and in truth. Because if I'm not honest, that's where the unhealthy came from.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the unhealthy came from. No matter if that was relational with individuals around me. Lauren and I had to walk through that and learn that together, where our careers were both going two different ways, and we were roommates passing each other.
Mm-hmm.
Weren't being honest, but didn't know that there was anything to be honest about.
Sure.
So not being able to come to the table and then hear each other out, not responding emotionally to what they were saying, but meeting them where they're at and hearing what they're saying. And we still work on that sometimes, But anyway, ultimately, I think it's just walking in truth and being honest with how I'm doing.
That's really good. Yeah. Because I think that is something when you're called to that, and especially when you can't choose that. I mean, you can't wake up one day and say, I don't want to lead today. I mean, you can, and you can get alone.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you're going to get that call. You're going to get that, and I think that's why so many times we see leaders burned out and kind of wanting to shake off that responsibility. Yeah. But I love that. And I love getting comfortable with just knowing that there's never a time that you arrive. There's always a time that you need to be introspective and just be honest with God about where you're at. That's so good.
Yeah. And I think sometimes that's, even for the, those in the marketplace, leading someone that aspires to lead, while it can be something that's kind of deep down, we're not trying to climb the ladder to get to the very front. Again, some of that's kingdom, and marketplace is a little different. But if I'm going to lead, I first have to allow myself to be led. I think that's a principle that matters. And so that means that there are people ahead of me that I can learn from or that I'm listening to. And ultimately, it's God, right? And so I have to lead myself into healthy places and allow for that. So there are times where, we get to run with some amazing people. And so, I wake up in the morning and the first thing I do, I pause and I'm like, Lord, thank you for this breath today. And that's new for me, because I want to jump up and go to work, but before I look at that, I'm thanking God for that day, and before I even spin around in the bed, but then I'm looking at the phone, see if maybe I missed something. I hope nobody, anything. And,
I love that you said that too, that if you are going to lead, you also have to be willing to be led. And I love that because sometimes I think, and I don't know where this comes from, this could be my birth order, this could just be part of my immaturity. And there have been times though where I felt like I wasn't leading if I had a mentor or if I had someone that I was relying on for advice. And so those years were the hardest for me because I'm pulling from nothing, I'm pulling from nothing. And so I have watched you, and there's several people that you will call. You've said, I called my mentor. Who in your life would you point to that you say is a mentor to you?
Yeah, man. There are several.
Yeah.
I've spoken before about the early guys, the bivocational pastors that now look at that are such heroes of faith. Hebrews has that hall of faith, and it lists all the greats in the Bible. And I got a list of men and women both that poured into my life, that saw stuff that I could not perceive at the time. Some of those guys are local even now. Some local pastors that I call on, and I'll say, hey, you've been in this thing for a minute. And these words, longevity and endurance and long suffering. And guys, when they have a tenure at a place, whether that's marketplace or ministry, that means something because they've endured some storms. Anybody that's in leadership, that happens. And so whether that's, Pastor West there in Van Buren, he and I have had a lot of miles together and a lot of questions. And I used used to try to get as much windshield time with him as I could just to ask questions. What are your thoughts, on this? And I'll still call him at times. And then there's a brother in Atlanta that I'll call. Some of those bivocational guys I can still call. I mean, it's just amazing how God will set the right people in the right place during the right season.
Good.
And just kind of stir. And you're like, oh yeah, we need to chat. I'm just curious, but yeah.
And the older that you get, I feel like the more experience that you maybe go through, you call them a little quicker, I think, maybe.
Yeah.
If there's someone who's looking to grow in their leadership, how would you advise them to find a mentor, number one? And if there's a quality that you can think of when you think of mentors, because I know sometimes that's not something that we prioritize when we're thrown into a new leadership role.
Yeah.
And for me, I had built-in mentors. I had my parents. I had you guys, But if someone doesn't have that person, what would you advise them to do?
Yeah. I think being teachable is one of the greatest things. And in order to do that, you have to ask questions and be willing to humble yourself and ask questions. Again, we live in a world where the greatest idol, I believe, in America is opinions. Like
that's so good.
Everybody has an opinion, and everybody's opinion is it matters, and they feel entitled that everybody else acknowledges their opinion.
Yeah.
And the opposite of that is humility.
That's good.
And I don't have an opinion, or I don't have I got opinions about everything personally. Yeah. I also don't feel like my opinion matters in a lot of ways. Right. It really doesn't. Like even in leadership, we're a team. We move together as a team. It matters, but it's not the form of leadership that I think is healthy in my world for certain. Yeah. But yeah, I think it's asking questions and finding somebody that will engage you. And you'll have to learn the hard way. Some people engage that well, some people don't. I'm sure I've missed it sometimes when someone was reaching towards me. Yep. But yeah, I think it's finding someone that you can trust, someone that is obviously somewhere you aspire to be, somebody that's ahead of you a little bit. And be willing to ask the questions and be respectful of, especially as that grows, of their time and just in and out. And I'm just taking what I got and, the question that I have, and thank you, I'll let you go, kind of thing.
And don't get discouraged if you don't. I think one of the things I would advise is, if you see someone and you identify that person, I want to learn from them. Don't be discouraged if that person doesn't respond the way you think or doesn't have that time right now. Give grace, move on, find someone different. I think sometimes people can have a bad taste in their mouth when they find somebody and it's not exactly like they thought it would be. And so anyways, don't get discouraged. Keep looking. A mentor is so vital in your leadership.
Yes.
So staying teachable, you talked about this already, and I loved that because I do think that that's something that every leader possesses, is the ability to stay teachable. My mom used to say, I love to learn. I'm a lifetime learner. If you have that thought, you never stop learning. And that's why we look at great leaders, and it continues to get even better as they learn.
Erica, you said something about the mentoring thing. And one thing that I would add to that further is like we're all being mentored already. Like we are naturally taking in. The question is, what are we taking in? Whether it's doom scrolling or look, the content is out there.
Yeah.
You can find someone that's ahead of you and you can learn from them. A lot of times people aren't asking for a mentor, they're asking to be seen. And that's why we get dissatisfied. We have more content. I have access to pastors who are pastoring way beyond me, both in years and their knowledge and their wisdom and their discernment. And I should be able to be okay with that, really. Again, I'm not minimalizing the relational part of it. And that's one thing. Yeah. So if you're asking for a best friend, okay, then let's ask for a best friend.
Good, yes.
But if we're asking for a mentor, the question is, where can that be found? Where are you investing in? And I've said this a lot even today, but I'm not meaning like it's all about me or pouring into myself, but the growth doesn't happen by accident. Like your mom said, I'm a lifelong learner. We should be teachable, ask the questions, find the content, find the person, follow, subscribe, and then stay with the task.
And then, oh, that's so good. And it's true, because I think that's what we hear. We hear a lot of people talking about mentors, and you do just see almost like someone attached to that mentor. And you're right. I mean, it's out there. I think it's also important to say, just because the viral podcast is out there and a ton of people are listening and subscribing to it, doesn't mean that it's truth, and doesn't mean that it's lasting leadership. So you have to be so careful who speaks into your life. That's something I learned early on, was not everybody that wants to speak into your life or that does speak into your life is something that you keep. Doesn't mean that you have to stop them and be extremely agitated, but I've learned almost the way I see it is it just passes right through. You don't have to engage with every single thing, and you don't, so remember that.
That's good.
Okay. Earning influence. This is something that intrigues me very much about leadership. And I'll be a little bit vulnerable here, because one of the prayers that I prayed when opening Heritage Group was, Lord, help me find favor in this industry like Daniel. And that sounds very spiritual for those of you who are maybe just watching for the industry and leadership part of this. But if you know me, that's how my mind works. But I just remember thinking, I don't know anything about this industry aside from the construction part. And I don't want to walk into a room and people think, why is she here? And that's okay. I knew that people would, but I was like, Lord, help me find favor. And so I would look up how to gain that favor. How do you gain that influence? And a lot of that is just not time. It's time. You earn it. And so speak to that. How do you earn influence as a leader?
I wish someone would have taught me in networking when I was younger. It's something that I think you do very well. And the world moves in relationships. And again, in my world, Jesus came forming relationships. And I'm talking about the mentor thing and the best friend or whatever. And there's a friendship there that is appropriate and right. I think I would say that, one, know that God establishes. So whether someone is, in the ministry or the pastoral side of it, or they're in the marketplace or wherever they find themselves, God establishes steps. And to say, as I think your prayer emulates there, that God, your favor, I desire. I want to do this for you, for your purposes. I think it creates a lot of easier sleep at night and resting that God is going to establish this or he's not.
That's good.
And that he has opportunity and certainly permission to change course, change path, or whatever. But I don't think it's wrong at all to ask for or desire the Lord's blessing, which is also the approval of, yes, this is the direction, that I want you. And I think everybody wants that.
Yeah.
Like, what is the purpose of life? Like, that's the bigger question. So whether, again, if they ascribe to Christianity or not, they desire that purpose of their life would be fulfilled. Surely it's more than just making money.
Yeah.
Or seeing how many people I can influence.
Yep.
It's more than that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you hear that later on in life when you're sitting there across from someone who's successful. Almost every single one of them try to point you to the purpose and just say, remember, the most important thing, God, your family, kids, even those who maybe aren't followers of Christ, they even know that time is the most valuable thing that you possibly could have. It's not money. I mean, I don't know that I've sat across from a single leader or watched a single podcast that says towards the end of their life, money was what it was about. That's what it was about. It's all about the money. It was all about how many people listen to me as a boss, which I really detest the word boss. I don't know why. I think it just is like a self-elevation that bothers me. But here's the whole thing that I've kind of figured out since that prayer of, Lord, give me, favor. God gives favor when your heart posture is in the right space. If your heart posture is, I want to elevate this, and this, and that's not God's agenda to elevate, then it's probably not going to happen. But like you said, when you start to settle into really that more of a, Lord, what are we doing? Lord, what is your kingdom? What is your purpose? When it's the right heart posture, that just kind of happens. It's not something that you can create. So
that's right.
I love that. But going into that, do you think that there are certain things that help people trust you? more?
I think longevity matters.
Mm-hmm.
You know, stick-to-itiveness.
That's good.
You know, and just being able to remain. Jesus would say, abide,
That's
as
good.
we abide in relationship with Him. There's something to be said about root systems, and sometimes God changes paths and things uproot and go and do. But I think as people learn to trust, they trust the behaviors, or they trust the heartbeat, the constant, what remains, what is always. The right people are able to give grace if things get outside of the heartbeat, or somebody loses their cool one day, or maybe they don't handle a situation one day. And in Christ, the Bible says a couple different times, like, make room for one another's faults. That's going to happen. But man, if I were to think about, the people that I consider are standing closest to me, they've seen that. But there's still what remains.
Yeah.
The heartbeat.
Yeah.
And what is center whenever the dust settles.
That's so good. And I think what you're describing is security. And that's something that really resonated for me was, with the people that you lead, if they feel secure enough to show you who they really are, to share their heart, to share more than just what you're there for, then that's trust, and I don't think everybody in the marketplace feels that with their boss or with their superiors. I think that's so many times we've heard, well, you're replaceable, and the heartbeat behind that to me is just ugly. And it's not that it's not true, but one of the things I think as a leader that you have always done is provide security for people. You're not just gonna kick them to the curb when things get wrong, or you're not gonna define them from one or two things, So
I think it is relational for sure, and I think the bigger picture of that is the why, is the mission, it's what are we about, what are we really doing, and that brings center to a lot, because people aren't expendable. Some corporate may say that, maybe they may even have to function that way at various times. But as you were talking about people that maybe have known great success and they get to the end of life, I think no matter how much money they've made, or how big the platform, how much success, how much their name is known, everybody looks back to see what's left, to see is there a legacy?
Good.
Is there something that remains after I'm gone? And again, I think everybody wants that. Everyone desires that my life surely built something. And if that is within my family and the heartbeat that is going to last beyond generations, certainly I think that's part of it. But I think that's a great question for us to ask when things get all disheveled and dust is flying. Why?
Yeah.
And how do we get everybody in to focus and pursue? And
that's a good leader too, is being able to navigate all the different personalities. And I think that was part of my journey of discovery is because of my birth order, I found more value in certain personalities in a transparent way, just being transparent.
Right.
I've found more value in some personalities than others. And I've watched you, and you have all different kinds of personalities around you. That's important. And when you start to really gain traction, I think as a leader, is when you realize that you have found, and as I'm talking, I know what it is, and I've prayed for this, is that you see people like God sees them, right? Because He didn't create anybody, no personality that's greater than the other. So, but that's something I've kind of found.
That's good.
All right, leading with the future in mind. How is thinking, and I love this about you because I do believe that you are like me in this way. We think about the future. We like to dream, As you lead, is there something that you think about? Whenever you think about the future, does that change the way that you lead?
Yes, and it can be bad also.
Yeah.
True. I can crash into the hypotheticals of what if.
Yes.
But sometimes those hypotheticals is a little bit of insight as to what's going to happen if this is handled wrong, or if this is handled right, or the dream of if we do this, then maybe we'll be able to do that.
Yeah.
And so, I do. I think being able to look ahead is important, and that matters. And obviously, there's got to be vision. There's got to be direction, and why. And is this going to align with that? And that means also being able to learn to say no.
That's good.
Sometimes, or just recognize that
Timing,
stewardship, me stewarding me. Resources are limited. I don't care who it is, where it is, including the personal side of it. So we have to steward well, and figuring out how to do that well instead of being spread so thin, as they would say, that now you're of no potency whatsoever because you're just a little bit of everywhere. It's kind of dialing that into.
I think about when I think of future, I think from my perspective, and I think about retention and growth, right?
Yeah.
And I'm always trying to figure out, which one is most important.
Yeah.
And making sure, because I know the heart of a leader, I believe, is to make sure that as you lead and you go forward and grow, that you're not leaving anyone.
Yeah.
And so I guess my question is, with that in mind, as you're growing, do you find something effective? Maybe it sounds manipulative to say this, but is there a leadership method that you find is important when you're making sure not to leave people behind in the growth?
Yeah. I think twofold. I think one, making sure that I'm listening a lot to people around me. Patterns matter. I tend to pick up on patterns pretty easily, and so when people get out of pattern, it just kind of stands out a little bit. And sometimes that's not always right, but I still get to ask questions, still get to check in, and being able to step into a conversation and have enough relational equity that I can step into a conversation. And they trust hard, or they trust. And so I think any leader has to be able to have a higher perspective, at least desire that. I don't feel like I sit on something that's way higher than everyone else. But I do have some amazing people around me that get to handle, maybe this department, that department, and then, I'm relying on them. Yeah. But it also means if their department is not doing well, or if I see that they as an individual have kind of changed some patterns or whatever, then I'm just checking in on them. But the desire is not that their department functions well. The desire is that they are healthy, because I believe they are the one that makes their department healthy. So I think it's just relational. Yeah. And that, again, that's a different leadership strategy altogether, but it's the only one that I know. Is just the relational side of it, and is just desiring that people always are more important than the thing, whatever that is.
It's as you talk about that, talking about relational, I think one of the things that people identify quickly is if you are genuine. That's a word, and that's just something that you can't produce on your own. I'm looking for the word, but you really can't fake.
Yeah.
If you are genuine, and that is something that I admire in you, is I do feel like it does start with your heart posture of genuinely caring about people. And man, so much just works itself out whenever you do genuinely. And if you find yourself as a leader, really burned out, like you said, just being able to allow the space and the voices and the right fill up so that you can continue to be genuine. There's been days that I've walked into the office and there's just not much genuine about me. I don't know that I've ever said that. And that's extremely vulnerable and embarrassing. But there are just those days. It's not that I don't love people. It's that I haven't taken time to recharge. And you can feel it.
That's right.
You can feel it. So let's talk about this. What do great leaders, because I said this earlier, there's so many commonalities in great leaders. What are things that you have identified that great leaders have in common?
Something that I still work on a lot. I've not mastered this at all, but they are people of, when I think of even the gentleman that I mentioned earlier, some of those, they're people of discipline.
That's so good and so convicting to me. But you're right.
They're just very disciplined, even disciplined to the point to get off the phone. Yeah. Like they're not chit-chatting with me about stuff. It's business. And I mean the right kind of business, not that they're impersonable either. You know what I'm saying? Like you can be personable and stick to the task at hand. Sure. And they'll block off 15 minutes and they let me know before the conversation, I got 15 minutes right here. I tend to shy away from that because it it almost feels like I'm saying I'm important enough
Sure.
that I only have 15 minutes to spend with you. And that's not the heart at all.
Sure.
But I'll tell you what is the heart for me to run this race to the end.
Absolutely.
And that means that I have to steward myself well. Now, I've yet to tell
That's
somebody
good.
I got 15 minutes. I will block off, an hour for a session
Sure.
and try to give a heads up like this is, but that's more about the actual productivity of anything more than an hour.
Sure.
But that's what I've learned. Man, they're just people of discipline. In traveling with these guys, they have routines and they stick to the routines. And they have ways that they practice that in physical, practical ways, but that also comes from a spiritual discipline as well. And I think that affects, because that's the deepest part of who we are.
That's good.
Yeah.
What is one discipline that you've mastered in your life as a leader?
Well, one discipline that I enjoy is the exhale. Again, I've said pause, I've had exhale, but I have spaces. Maybe it's throughout a day. Maybe it's after for me, a Sunday or a Wednesday, where I just sit and just exhale.
Yeah.
And just take a moment, whether that's that, like before I jump into, wish I would have done this better, wish I would have done that better, that shouldn't have happened, why did that happen? We've talked about whatever it is. Before I jump into all of that noise, and just sit and just the rest of maybe presence. For me, just relationship with the Father, I think, is paramount for all of us. But certainly, in my understanding of scriptures, and that prayer time for me is just huge. Whether that's behind a steering wheel, whether it's prayer closet kind of stuff. So again, not mastered that, but I've really come to enjoy that time.
That's good.
I've really come to enjoy that invitation
Yeah.
to be still and know that He is God. Even when life is chaotic, when family's weird, when if Lauren and I find ourselves, working through something, just be still. And so again, not mastered, but I really have come to enjoy that.
That's awesome. And I think when I do take that space to exhale, what's crazy is the first things that really come to my mind are gratitude, thoughts of gratitude.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes when we don't take that time, we lose our joy because we forget the why. We forget to say, man, it's just a time of reflection, I think. And when you do allow Holy Spirit to just be present with you, I feel like He always fills my heart with gratitude. And then it's way easier throughout the week.
Yeah. Because the other side of it too is that, take the posture of a servant, true enough. In Christianity, like I'm a son to the Father.
Good.
Before anything else, before I can effectively function as a husband, as a father, as a pastor or a leader in other realms, that's, for me, is the most important thing.
Yeah.
And I can forget that because I like to earn my way.
That's good.
Or I like to work for the opportunity to walk into that space with Him. And so, again, it's a place of humility, but of such strength where I can just rest in the fact that He invited me first.
That's so good.
Before I ever knew that I needed.
That's right.
He set forward that invitation. And so anyway, that really matters. For me.
I love that. Where do you think that leaders differ the most? Like when you look at different leadership styles.
Yeah.
If you were to look at an opposite that is still a good leader of you, what does that look like?
Yeah. The guy that says, I got 15 minutes. No, it's him. Like we are so opposite.
Yeah.
Like I've seen him snap his fingers at somebody.
Yeah.
They were,
dang.
They were seated and he asked for something, he works with this guy every day and he was like, hey,
they're not offended.
I need to do
that's
this.
The thing.
No, you learn their language.
Yeah.
You learn their language.
Yeah.
If I did that to somebody, they would be like, what a jerk,
Yes.
But it wasn't taken that way because this guy's is high octane is what I call it.
Yep.
And it was, some expedient work that needed to be done. And he asked for it. And the guy was still just kind of sitting there staring at the paper. And he was like, go now, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Now, again, pastoral and some of this is a little bit different. But I think that's one thing for leaders to recognize because we all want to do well at what we do. But recognize like the biggest enemy to me will be me trying to be somebody else.
I was going to ask you that. Like, are you ever tempted?
Yes.
To be like,
yes.
I kind of like
Yeah. And sometimes it's right.
Yep,
That's
absolutely.
the hard part. Like sometimes it's right. It's like
Yep.
you are weak in this area and he is excelling or she is excelling. And so watch that and pay attention. But again, when I look in the mirror, it still has to be me.
Absolutely. And you can't morph into.
No, because then there's some imposter syndrome kind of stuff going on there. And then the realness of what people desire, which we were talking about in the beginning, they pick up on if it's genuine or not. If it's a real conversation or if you're just up there beating the drum and doing the cymbal dance, like the monkey that just kind of walks around doing the thing. And that's not what anybody wants. They want the genuine. The different leadership styles, again, something I wish I would have learned earlier. I mean, I love psychology. I love personalities and the way people function and why they do. And if somebody would have said, hey, you have your lane, they have their lane, there are different ways to accomplish the same things. You have strengths, function in your strengths and get people around you that function in other strengths that you don't have. And then look at what a team that presents. Because my personality is going to be attractive to certain personalities, mostly those that are my personality, right? And so in my world as the church, that means it means if I'm not careful, everybody around me will look like me.
Yes. That's good.
That's not what I want because I'm well aware that my personality or my strengths are not all the strengths and not all the beauty that the world would hold if I can even grab that and pull it in. That the diversity is the greater picture.
To emulate a leader that is a good leader. Absolutely, it's correct in the values, in the in the ways that God has established the fruit of the Spirit. For instance, if you're a Christian and you know about that, all of those things you want to emulate, and you want your team to emulate. However, if you can get comfortable, like you said, building a team that possess the strengths that maybe you don't naturally possess, man, those are the most awesome teams, and that's something I've definitely learned is, man, be humble enough to surround yourself with people who do things better than you. That's awesome. Yeah. That's awesome.
And let them lead.
That's good. Is that something that you have, because we are very similar in personality, is that something that you've had to kind of get better at, is allowing people to?
Yeah, I think so. But it's not, I don't think for me it's been necessarily of I could do it better than you. Because I got enough stuff to do.
Absolutely.
I don't really want to do it or whatever. But again, recognizing that opinions are opinions.
Yeah.
And letting them miss the mark.
Yeah.
Letting them fail. It's probably not going to crash the organization.
Yeah.
If one person fails a little bit.
Yeah.
And to expect them to be perfect is also.
It's really good.
Improbable.
Yep,
it's also impossible.
Yeah.
And so I think that's also the leader is that they feel confident enough to try more.
That's good.
To try more, to get outside of their comfort zone and know that if they do stumble, that you're the first shoulder they're going to be able to grab a hold of. And you're not going to throw them under the bus. You're going to guard them. You're going to protect them. You're going to have conversations if you need to, but you're mostly trying to promote their leadership. Security. Whatever that is. Yeah, exactly.
That's so good.
Very well stated.
I feel like we could go all day long on this because, these answers are really, really good. And I'm very excited for our audience to hear these answers. So if you could kind of wrap into everything we've discussed, what is something that someone should focus on? Maybe a couple of things they focus on practically if they're wanting to become a good leader. Yeah.
I think, and again, just considering how this applies to every leader, and I think it does, and I think it can. Paul said that Jesus, having thought equality with God, nothing to hold on to or nothing to be grasped, he emptied himself and became a servant. Right. And so that's the thing. And there's these, again, a stylistic thing, because there's the boss thing, like you said, where you're just pointing, everybody's seeing the picture of the guy on the throne and he's pointing and saying, let's go that way. And then the leader is down there helping everybody pull. But what is the practical way of that, of emptying oneself, but also maintaining a servant? And then how do you create that longevity?
Yeah.
Something that is sustainable. How do you steward yourself well? And I think the principle that I had to learn most in the last couple of years comes from that wells and waterfalls idea, that I have to steward myself well. If And I want to be all things to all people. I want to be all of that. But I can only do that as long as I'm healthy enough to do that and not wanting to quit and run away.
Good, yeah.
You know? And the principle comes from this. And I learned this from a place of burnout, maybe. I didn't know it was burnout, whatever. And it wasn't until I stepped away that I realized, like, whoa, I don't think I want to go back.
Yeah.
Like, this feels so good to be away. I think I'm done. And God met me and did,
Sure.
and affirmed and whatever. But this is what I learned, and I'll try to make this quick. There are moments in the ministry of Jesus, in the 3 years where he was walking out his ministry, where he sat with people and they came to him, asked questions or had needs. That would be what I call a well moment, where people are coming to Jesus to make a withdrawal from him. And that's important. Like, as a leader, I think people should be able to, that's what leadership is, where people come and debit from your life, your advice, your skills, your empathy, whatever it may be, they're able to pull from you. There are also places where Jesus sought out other people, whether it was Zacchaeus, whether it was the disciples themselves, as he called them out. And he very intentionally poured into those people. So he became a waterfall into their life. And I think as a leader, you have to know the difference.
That's good.
And you have to know that you can't pour into everybody all the time. Number one, you're not that important.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, everybody doesn't need something from you.
Yeah.
But more importantly than that is that you can't pour all the time. You just can't. If you do, you're going to mess around and grab a gavel or grab a staff, and you're going to be driving people.
That's
because
good.
you're going to do it from the bottom instead of from the poor. And so, I had to learn, because, again, I would say I'm not propped up waiting on a lot of people to come ask me what I think,
Sure.
or anything like I don't value my opinions that much, nor do I think anybody else should either. But my point is this: if Jesus, who was perfect and perfect strength and perfect full of everything, if he did not pour into everybody all the time, because somebody might say, well, Lee, you're saying, the wells and people should come and the waterfall and well, you're not Jesus. And I would say, that's my point. That's my point. Yeah. If Jesus conducted his life this way,
that's good. How
much more important is it for me to steward myself well, to know that I want to go home with 30% of what I started with, not the leftover 30%, but a functioning, healthy 30% to pour into my family, to walk through the door with shoulders back, the same energy that I walked into the hospital room with, or that I walked into the staff office with. How am I going to do that? Yeah. And it's wells and waterfalls. And so that is the step-by-step, day after day. Am I supposed to pour into this, or am I supposed to wait? Am I supposed to seek this out, whether that's this, whatever that may be. So to me, wells and waterfalls is a big thing. And I think that matters in any industry. Like where is the industry going to invest? Where are they going to pour? Or where are they going to be a source for something else within itself, or even someone that is behind or going to learn from or resource out of? Yeah.
I'm going to remember that. And I love that, because it's such a good picture, and my mind works in pictures, so that's probably going to stick with me for a long time. Thank you so much. Yeah. And thank you for being vulnerable enough to show us the journey. So many times it's hard as a leader to show the journey, and but I think this is so practical for people, because I think what we find ourselves doing as leaders is we're trying to get here, and you're telling me, the journey's still happening. Yeah. And man, what an awesome reminder to think about, Christ, the most incredible example that we all try to follow. And I think that's intentional. I know it is intentional of Heavenly Father to show us what that looks like with people, because that is a big lesson I've had to learn, is the access that people get, and making sure that your family doesn't suffer. Because like you said, and I'll remember this too, still having 30% when you go home. I mean, that's so manageable for us to do, but it has to be intentional.
Yeah.
And that's so good.
It's one thing to think about going home with a 30%, but that means if you started with 100, if you slept well, if you're not bringing a bunch of junk from yesterday, if you started with 100, that means you have 70% for today.
That's good.
And that's not a lot when you start dividing it up hour by hour.
Yep.
And so again, it is the intentional, and some days is a complete burnout. I'm not saying that I walk in 30% every day.
Yeah.
But I can give a good solid whenever I get there, whatever that is. You know what I'm saying? So I get that the leadership pulls in different ways on different days.
Yeah.
But 70% is not a lot. So that just means I have to be extremely intentional. And I'm still trying to figure that out.
We're still trying to figure that out.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much to our audience. Is there anything else you want to add, Pastor Lee?
You know, yeah. If I were, to say one more thing, I even referenced it this morning, so it's just kind of right there on. But Paul was talking to some disciples, and he was just correcting some things, and he says, obviously, I'm not living to please people. And I know that that's a whole different conversation maybe, but he says, he goes on to say that I'm living, for the approval of God. Like that's the thing. That's what he's saying. And that's what matters most. And that's the purpose, the legacy, all of us looking behind us and hoping that we did something with this life that matters. If we're living for that approval, if we're not doing it to please people and we're not manipulated or able to be manipulated by people, and if you never step into that pleasing stuff, which again, recovering people pleaser here. So I'm again, still learning. But living for that approval, I think it satisfies a lot. It satisfies a lot. You get to walk in truth. You get to keep it on the table. There's nothing but the same thing to say every time.
Good. When
you're just living to please Him and for His approval. And again, I think that functions in any space.
Absolutely. I love that. That's really, really good. I'm so excited that I chose you to kick off this leadership that lasts. I think that was such good, solid information. To our audience, I just want to invite you that if you do not have a good leader in your life that speaks truth, I can save a seat for you at Kibler Baptist Church. Have a great leader there, and I'm very, very thankful to have you as a friend and as a pastor. I hope that you will follow this series about leadership that lasts, and I would like to invite you that if you know an exceptional leader that you would like to see on the podcast, please reach out so that I can shoot them an invite. I'd love to see it. We thank you so much for watching. We'll talk to you later.